Good morning to all. I'm going to call to order the meeting for the Board of Regents and its Chief Internal Auditor Search Committee. Angela, please do the roll.
Chair Ariscotta,
Here.
Regent Boylan,
Yeah.
Regent Brager,
Here.
Regent Carvalho,
Here.
Regent Cruz Crawford,
Here.
Regent Del Carlo. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. If we can please face the flag and continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair Carvalho, can you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chair. Before beginning, we take a moment to recognize that here in Nevada, we stand on the land of the Washishu, the Washoe, the Numu, Northern Paiute, the Niue, the Western Shoshone, and the Nuwu, the Southern Paiute. We take a moment to recognize and honor their stewardship that continues in today. With this recognition, we state an intention to rightfully include their voice and respect them as the 27 sovereign tribal nations of Nevada. So as we continue with the meeting, we're going to first start off with public comment. We're going to start off with public comment at GBC. Is there any public comment at GBC?
There is none at this time.
Excellent. Is there public comment from the systems office in Reno?
There is none.
Is none. Excellent. And before you go over down to Las Vegas, I just want to give a first public comment period is that for those who would like to call in and offer a public comment, please call 669-444-9171 and enter meeting ID 928-4944-5069 and passcode 555-555. So now I'm going to follow that up with public comment in Las Vegas. Is there public comment in Las Vegas?
There doesn't appear to be any.
Yeah.
No public comment in Las Vegas?
There's public comment, Las Vegas.
Excellent. Public comment in Las Vegas. Is that Regent McMichael with public comment?
Yes, it is.
Please continue, sir. 2 minutes.
I wish to read a passage from our Freedom of Expression Aspirational Statement of Values. NSHE and its institutions are committed to the principle that it may not restrict or suppress debate or deliberation because the ideas put forth are thought to be offensive, unwise, immoral, or misguided. History shows that when institutions of higher education attempt to censor or punish the free expression of ideas, they undermine their core function in promoting rational discussion, inquiry, and discovery, and the dissemination of knowledge. It is not the proper response of NSHE and its institutions to attempt to shield individuals from ideas and opinions they find unwelcome, and its institution to attempt to shield individuals from ideas and opinions they find unwelcome, disagreeable, or even deeply offensive. It is for members of the NSHE community to make those judgments for themselves. And I'm just referencing that because apparently we don't uphold ourselves to these aspirational statements of value when we determine to censor or punish individuals for freedom of speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your public comment. Is there additional public comment in Las Vegas? None heard. We're going to go ahead and continue on to item number 2.
Mr. Chair,
Number
excuse me.
2. Yes, ma'am.
This is Carrie Nikolajewski, Chief of Staff. If you could call for public comment on the phone.
Always appreciate your guidance
you.
on this. Public comment on the phone, SCS? Thank you. All right, now at this time, we're going to go ahead and transition on to item number 2. As we all know, and as we can all see, at the June 6th and 7th of this year, our quarterly meeting, we, the Board of Regents, we delegated part of the authority set forth on our handbook of the Board of Regents to the ad hoc Chief Internal Auditor Search Committee. And this specifically stated that the board granted authorization to the search committee to approve the roles and responsibilities of the Chief Internal Auditor and to identify the necessary qualifications, experience, competencies to carry out those roles and responsibilities. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and shift gears and send it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Chris Vitton. Chris Vitton, CFO Vitton, if you could assist us with the discussion of the current roles and responsibilities and establish futures. Please, sir.
Good morning, Chris Vitone, NSHE Chief Financial Officer. And I suppose best place to start is to mention first what you have as item 2A is the current position description for the Chief Internal Auditor position. So this is the position description as last updated in December of 18, and that is here for you to review today. Those qualifications, the minimum qualifications and responsibilities are what was finalized at that time. At your June meeting, the board approved the update to the internal audit charter. That update was prepared primarily based on guidance provided by the Internal Audit Institute of Internal Auditors, using the global audit standards that they published in January of 2024. And within those standards, that guidance included roles and responsibilities for both the audit oversight that included the board's oversight and for the position of Chief Internal Auditor. So included in your materials also is a link to the handbook section that was updated when the charter was updated. So that's Handbook Title 4, Chapter 9. And starting on page 5 of that section actually is where you would find roles and responsibilities that were approved as part of the audit charter update. So beginning there, there's a section for the Board of Regents oversight. And then on the second page of that, or so it's page 6 of the handbook section, is where you'll find the starting section for the Chief Internal Auditor that includes some background, generally profile of internal auditors that tends to be fairly common around ethics and professionalism and objectivity. These are fairly, I think you'll note them as appropriate standards and expectations for your Chief Internal Auditor having independence and objectivity. And of course, this is all why these standards are in your handbook and under the purview of the board directly. Going a little further into the charter on page 7, you'll note a section titled Managing the Internal Audit Function, and I think there it gets into a little more specifically the types of responsibilities, the types of activities that correspond to what you see in the position description. So there is alignment in terms of the substance of those responsibilities in the charter that are very similar and aligned with the responsibilities in the position description, the way it was updated in 2018. Again, because this is a fairly, both the position description and the charter update represent industry standards in these roles. So there's a lot of comparability there. There is some difference in terms of the phrasing, the specifics between the two documents. And so I think one item you may want to discuss is the opportunity to align the responsibilities in the position description with the responsibilities in your charter, so that those could be in alignment. That being said, these responsibilities, I think, all fall under the same broad headings that you're already working with again, the same substance. I could stop there and see if you have any questions, or if you would like to discuss the qualifications separately, or if there are any particular responsibilities that you may have noted in the position description that was circulated that may have a question about or want to discuss in any detail.
Questions in Las Vegas? Hearing none? Chris, I think, CFO Fatan, thank you for the roles and responsibilities and providing a background on them. And most importantly, also the updated charter and how it coincides with our current listing. Albeit they were updated in 2018, it's important that it's not that we need to have a mirror image of those roles and responsibilities. But if amendments are recommended by anybody, we definitely and unquestionably, we need to hear them. We as a committee should and will take action today to update some of those roles and responsibilities. If the dais and everyone else down there feels that it's necessary to update the roles and responsibilities, or to maintain status quo for the high level of responsibility placed upon our chief internal auditor. What we can also do, as CFO Vatan was mentioning, is that we can also include staff and direct the staff to incorporate any changes in the position description. So I'm going to go back to Las Vegas, or to anyone on the internet, Regent Cruz Crawford I was referring to. But anybody on the search committee who would like to have input on this?
Chair Arascona.
Yes, sir, Regent Boylan.
Thank you, Chair. I looked at something on the NSHE site. If you go down to the left, wee little thing, careers, and then you go to the manager position and the qualifications in there. And I was a wee bit lost about the difference between the qualifications we are asking for a manager position and the qualifications that Mr. Vuitton talked about. So maybe Mr. Vuitton can help us a wee bit and tell us what really are the differences between that manager position that we have open and the position requirements that we're asking for now for the director, what's the title? Sorry. Chief Internal Officer, right, thank you. Thank you, Regent.
Pardon the interruption, Linda
Yes,
King.
ma'am.
Linda King for the record. I just want to make sure that we stay on the agendized item. Right now, we're on to A, the roles and responsibilities, and I believe, Regent Boylan, that your question would be for the next item, which is experience and qualifications. If you prefer to compare, I just want to make sure that we stay in the right bucket.
I'm so glad you're here. I appreciate that, but that was just on my mind, that's all. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. And actually, Regent Boylan, you set us up to segue into part B of this item, so I appreciate it. So, Mr. Baton, if you could also lead us in the discussion that will be necessary qualifications. The qualification experience and
Excuse me, Chair, Linda King for the record. We need to have an action on 2A before you move to 2B. If
I'm
you-
going to echo the sentiments of Regent. Nope, that's all right. I'm going to echo the sentiments of Regent Boylan. Thank you, Counselor. So we're going to go ahead and go back to, let me go back there. On 2A, regarding the roles and responsibilities, does anybody have a recommendation or they would to update, change this, certain certain roles and responsibilities? Or are we comfortable with go ahead and leaving it as is stated from 2018? Is there a motion on the table?
This is Susan Brager. I would make a motion to, not certain how to phrase it, to stay with the 2018. On number, affirm and approve 1 and 2. Or 1, excuse me, affirm and approve the current roles and responsibilities. Thank you. I'm usually more,
I'm
Correct.
Linda King for the record. I'm going to interrupt again.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we've got a complete motion because our action involves also directing staff to revise and update the document. So right now, your motion is to maintain the same roles and responsibilities,
correct.
but the staff will have to be directed to just update the technical parts of the document.
Okay.
And then so that would just be the last part if you want to add that in.
Okay. Can I do as stated by council?
Sure, let me state it.
Okay.
And the motion would also include to direct staff to incorporate any revisions. As we've mentioned, their roles and responsibilities would remain as stated on file with NSHE Human Resources, and the position announcement will be used for recruitment purposes with final approval of the announcement by the committee chair in accordance with this motion.
Thank you. That would be my motion.
I will second that. Regent Del Carlo here.
Thank you, Regent Del Carlo. And I am going to also place in Regent Prager, I would like to ask for a friendly amendment on this. Is also if we can recommend updates based on the recently modified internal audit department charter and the new global internal audit standards. I feel like including those standards is relevant to this position. If you'd be willing to accept that friendly amendment.
Linda King for the record, since we have a second on the motion, if you'd like to incorporate those changes, we can withdraw the motion in the second and restate the motion. I'll help.
No, it's not that I can't do it. Okay, I would accept the friendly amendment and add that to the motion that the committee will stay with the 2018 to affirm and approve the current roles and responsibilities established for the chief internal auditor, to approve revisions to the roles and responsibilities, and direct staff to incorporate those revisions into the position description on file with NSHE Human Resources and the position announcement used for recruitment purposes, with final approval of the position announcement by the committee chair in accordance with the roles and responsibilities approved by the committee. Enough?
Yes, and Chair, you can call for a second. I believe everyone understands.
Thank you. All in one breath compliments, Mr. Regent Prager. Is there a second on the table? Thank you, Regent Del Carlo. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? None opposed? Excellent. So we just completed the NSHE Chief Internal Auditor, the roles and responsibilities. Thank you, Regent Prager. We're going to move on to 2B, as in Bravo. Once again, aided by our CFO, Vatan, discuss the necessary qualifications, experience, and competency required for the Chief Internal Auditor to carry out by the committee under the agenda item number 2A. CFO Vatan.
Thank you, Chair Escada. Chris Fatone for the record. And if it's okay, I'll discuss the current qualifications as again approved in the December 18 update for the Chief Internal Auditor. And if it's okay, I'll go ahead and make the comparison of those qualifications to the Internal Audit Manager position that's currently posted at the same time I think it'll make that clear as we go through it. So the current minimum qualifications for the position as drafted in 2018 for the Chief Internal Auditor, it's a requirement of a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in accounting, finance, or a related field, and 10 years of professional and managerial experience, or a master's degree and 7 years of comparable professional managerial experience. So it's either minimum of a bachelor's degree in 10 years or a master's degree in 7 years, and then listed as a preference item, the certification certified public accountant. For the internal audit manager position that's posted, that position requires a bachelor's degree in accounting, business, or finance or closely related field, and 7 years of progressive experience directly applicable to the position, including at least 3 in management. So the difference being 7 years for a bachelor's degree versus 10 years for a bachelor's degree, with a requirement of having 3 in management. Your current requirement for the chief doesn't really distinguish between management experience and otherwise experience in a comparable role in the relevant field. And the manager position doesn't list any neither required or preferred certifications. Those are the main differences. I don't know if you'd like me to pause there or if you'd like me to offer Chief Human Resources Officer Eric Gilliland is here also to answer questions if you like in terms of comparable positions in the market. But
I have a questions from Susan Brager, if that's okay at this time.
Regent Break, please.
Okay, my
Yes,
question,
definitely.
is this what we have now? Even though I read everything, I just want to be very clear. And so people in positions, do they have this now?
This is the description on file.
Right.
And I know that our current interim chief meets this minimum requirement as it's currently posted.
Okay.
For this position, and certainly for the manager position. I'd have to check on the position descriptions as they were posted for when folks were originally hired. At this time, we actually don't have any filled internal audit manager positions because
Right.
year one is interim and the other is vacant.
So quick follow-up question, if that's okay, Chair Escada. Are we looking to change this? Is Chair looking to change this?
I'm looking to get recommendations from every committee member. Input is welcome and encouraged throughout this process. I feel that it's important and extremely necessary that input throughout the entire process from our committee members is placed. You asking me personally if I would like to update these qualifications and the education experience, the certifications? Yes, I feel that it's necessary. This hasn't been updated since 2018. And if we're looking, which I have right here to my right, the internal audit manager job description, if we're putting the positions side by side, the chief needs to surpass in the experience, qualifications, the knowledge, the supervisory tenure needs to exceed what our internal audit manager is currently posted as.
Okay, and
So-
so here I'm, and Susan Brager for the record. And what I just heard was, so the chief does have the bachelor's 10 degree or master in 7 years. The manager has, I just want to be clear, bachelor's and 7 and 3. So it is less than, correct? Or am I doing it backwards? I don't think so. So you want, I guess I just want to have clarity on It sounds like you would be making a motion for something different from 2018, and that's what I'm trying to get to.
Oh, Regent Berger, I'm playing my cards close to my chest right now.
I can tell
I think
that,
it's
and I'm
best-
trying to get him out.
I think it's best that we listen to the entire committee and the
How's it-
recommendations set forth.
Right, if
set
anyone
forth
has
by
a
everybody.
comment, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'm going to make a motion.
Let's go ahead and go to the dais first. Is there anyone on the table in Las Vegas that has comment in regards to the qualifications, the education experience, and the certifications?
This is Regent Del Carlo. I have a question.
Please go ahead, Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot. When did you say the last time this was changed?
The draft position description that you have was updated in December of 2018.
Okay, and prior to that, do you know?
I am afraid I don't. I believe I do not know prior to 18.
I guess what I'm getting at is the last time we hired for this position permanently, was that in 2015 when we hired Joe Sunbury?
That's my recollection, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and so, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm just trying to determine if we have changed this substantially since we had hired Joe Sunbury, who was very successful in his position from 2015 until he went over to UNLV. If there's any, and it seems to me like you're changing the standard. You're wanting to change the standards now, is what I'm hearing. Chair Arascata.
I think right now I feel that the standards should be updated and the qualifications should be increased because as we're looking, I'm looking at the job posting right here in front of me. Mr. Vitone, if you can do a comparison also to the internal audit manager. Earlier in the conversation, you were mentioning about the chief internal auditor in the previous minimum experience, but you didn't touch, and you talked about the minimum experience over the internal audit manager. But as I look over here, there are some strongly preferred qualifications. Can you touch upon those, please?
Oh, certainly. So in your internal audit manager position description, the announcement that's out and open currently, strongly preferred qualifications include the certifications, so the certified public accountant or relevant certifications, including certified internal auditor, certified information systems auditor, et cetera, or a master's degree in business accounting or related area specialization. It goes on to clarify or expand on the experience requirement to include a preference for 10 years of experience in external auditing, internal auditing, or other business analysis, preferably in higher education or government or nonprofit. And another strongly preferred qualification of 5 years of management or supervisory experience. And so again, I think I appreciate you reminding me to point those out or prompting me to point those out, Regent Arascata. Those are strong, those are listed as preferred qualifications, which in the context of the search process, and I'd perhaps ask Chief HR Officer Gilliland to make sure I stay in my lane here, but in terms of thinking about how the search process works for you, the minimum qualifications work in such a way that you would not be able to consider a candidate that does not meet the minimum. The preferred or strongly preferred represent a way of signaling the other important criteria that weight heavily in the evaluation, such that if you have applicants that present the preferred qualifications, you would rank them more highly than those that do not have the preferred. But it doesn't. You're in a position to be able to consider the candidates that meet the minimum, and accept candidates and hopefully find candidates that hit your strongly preferred as well. So it's a way of trying to, someone mentioned the cast a wide net, a way of how you approach the search in terms of keeping the pool or having an applicant pool that gives you viable candidates. So your current Chief Internal Auditor position description from 2018 only lists one preference requirement, and it is the Certified Public Accountant certification.
Chair Arascata.
1 minute, Mr. Boyd. 1 minute, Regent. I want to follow
Yes,
up
sir.
with Mr. Vatan. I'm just reviewing paperwork, but weren't the standards for manager recently increased?
I'm sorry, Regent Arascata, are you referring to the update in the charter around the, do you mean the, I'm sorry, that's your question for the manager or the chief? I'm sorry.
For the manager. For a manager, the position that we currently had, for the one that I'm looking at right here, is that in a comparison to what we had, is that I just wanted to make sure that the standards for the manager were also recently increased. Is that correct? And compared to what we previously had. Because the job posting that we had, I'm not quite sure how long ago, but posting we had quite a while back, the standards were not, or the strongly preferred and the knowledge, skills, and abilities, in addition to the salary grade and the minimum qualifications, have all been increased since that time. Is that correct?
Yes, Chris Fatone, yes, Regent Arascata. The position description for the manager was updated for this most recent search that is open currently. So this was, those qualifications were updated as recently as June for that announcement.
And those qualifications were raised up a notch in order to bring more highly qualified individuals in and increase the acumen of the applicants. Is that also correct?
That is my understanding. I apologize. I wasn't engaged in initiating that search, but it is my understanding the qualifications were updated at that time. And again, to the point of comparing the two positions, it would make sense to me that you would look at those strong preference items for the manager and consider whether those strong preference items may be strong preference items for the chief as well, or if any may be more appropriate as a minimum, given the difference in the two positions.
Okay. So, I just want last time clarifications, I'll go over to you, Regent Boylan, is that for the internal audit manager, that position, the minimum qualifications, in addition to the strongly preferred qualifications, were all updated for this job posting. And the knowledge, skills, and abilities were all updated for this position. So my question is, well, not a question, my statement is, if we updated the qualifications, the minimum qualifications, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, in addition to the strongly preferred qualifications for the manager, I feel it's our due diligence to also update for the chief internal auditor. If the bar is going to be raised for one position that is going to be supervised by our chief internal auditor, we need to increase the standards for the chief internal auditor. Because we need to make sure that the playing field is in a supervisory role, and that the person who's the internal audit manager, is not qualified higher than the chief internal auditor. Regent Boylan, to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just figured, and I think I know where you're coming from now. If Mr. Gilliland could, did I say that right? Yeah, all right. If he could jump in and explain the differences, and of course, I always believe the most highly qualified person should be in a position. So if he could explain a wee bit more on those two and what's happening, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gilliland, please.
Hello. All right. Thank you. For the record, Eric Gillen, thank you for the question, Regent Boylan. Was a lot of questions there, so try to wrap some of those together. As far as the manager, the updates to the manager position, the primary updates to that were to the preferred qualifications. And that was at, quite frankly, my request when that was being developed, because I'm a huge fan of preferred qualifications, and the reason I like preferred qualifications is they don't disqualify candidates, but they allow the committee, whether it's the search committee or system office search committee, to differentiate between candidates and to evaluate candidates based on criteria that have been set as being important. Maybe not required. Minimum should be the bare minimum a candidate needs to perform the job. The preferreds are the nice to haves. Those are things that if we can get a candidate that has those, that would be great. So that was the primary update to the manager position. As far as the relationship between that and the chief position and what's currently established for the qualifications, the apples to apples comparison, the chief internal auditor does require a higher level of qualifications of years of experience. So at the bachelor level, it requires 10 years of experience versus 7 years of experience for the manager with a bachelor's degree. What's not written, and if I could make a recommendation that if we do make a change, maybe we clarify this, and CFO Vatone mentioned it, is that the related experience that's currently listed for the chief is not specific to, let's say, supervisory experience, things that the chief would do. It's embedded within that, because if we're looking for somebody with 10 years of related experience, we're looking for somebody with 10 years of experience that is at the same level as the chief auditor, as we've established it. But it may be good to clarify that we are looking for someone with, let's say, supervisory experience with oversight over a complex audit department. Things of that nature would help to clarify, not only for you as the search committee as you're evaluating candidates, but also for candidates to really get a good idea, not only of what the competencies, the roles, responsibilities are, but also what those qualifications are. And it just helps to alleviate any questions whether somebody's qualified or not. So that would be a recommendation. But as written, again, indirectly, the chief does require a higher level experience. Now, the years of experience does drop with a master's degree, but we're adding that master's component onto that. So that, again, would be elevated above the manager.
One quick question, Mr. Gilliland, and if you allow that, Chair Arascata. So,
Yes, sir, please.
just theoretical, if somebody meets the minimum, or doesn't, let's say, meet the minimum requirements completely, but has plenty of the preferred requirements, can we make a decision on saying, I'm asking legally, and is it possible that, oh, well, they didn't have all the minimum requirements, but they had some preferred, so that person could be considered, is my question.
For the record, Eric Gillen, generally, no. They would have to meet all of the preferred, or sorry, excuse me, all of the minimum qualifications.
Okay.
So essentially you want to think of it as an upside or as a funnel when we're doing recruitments. We want to set the minimums as broad as possible, but ensuring that those minimums, somebody with those minimums could do the job. And then you want to filter down. So you use your minimums to cast the widest net possible. We want to look at, I would love to see 100 candidates for this. As a search committee, you may not want to see 100 candidates. I do. I would love it. So we want to cast as wide a net as possible. And then we use the preferreds to narrow that net down. And then we use the interviews and the screening. That all is intended to narrow down to get to the best qualified candidate out of that applicant pool. So my recommendation is always good discussion on minimum qualifications, establishing those as those bare minimums, but not exceeding those. Because you don't want to, Regent Boylan, I've seen this too many times where we exclude a highly qualified candidate because they don't meet a long list of minimum qualifications, but they would have been great in the job. And so that's part of, as your work with the search committee, is trying to figure out what's the best set of minimum qualifications to get somebody qualified, but also so that we can look at the largest number of qualified candidates.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Regent
Chair.
Boylan.
Yes, sir.
Pleasant. Mr. Gilliland, don't turn that microphone off yet. So I'm just going to kind of follow up with what you just said. You want to have minimum qualifications and preferred qualifications. Now, the preferred qualifications, you said that you just stated that if they don't meet the minimum, but they have the preferred, they would be looked at as the applicant for this position.
No, they would be
Is that-
disqualified. If they don't meet all of the posted minimums, they would be disqualified. Even regardless
Okay.
of whether they meet the preferreds. Sorry, and Eric Gillen for the record.
That's better clarity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would equate it, and Eric Gillen for the record, this is always a good way that I approach this around minimums and preferreds is if you're shopping for a car, you identify what are the minimums. I need 4 wheels, I need an engine, I need a steering wheel. Maybe I live in the mountains, I need 4-wheel drive. That's the bare minimum. That's what I need. That's all the vehicle needs to do the job that I need it to do. But I may want a CD player. I may want leather interior. I may want to look flashy with some nice rims. Those are the preferreds. I don't have to have them to get to work and to get to the grocery store, but those are the things I'd like to have. And so if you think about the minimums and preferreds in that way, what do we absolutely need for somebody to do this job? We may want somebody with a master's degree. We may want somebody with certifications, things of that nature. They may not be required for the job. So let's keep the minimums where the minimum at the bare minimum and evaluate candidates. And then we can say candidate A they're ticking all the boxes. They're our top candidate. It helps you as a search committee to filter through candidates and arrive at that most qualified, the top tier candidate that you have in the pool.
Thank you for that clarity. I do appreciate it. And we will be touching upon those minimum qualifications right now. So as we have listed, once again, I'm going to continue to refer back to my paperwork. The internal audit manager position, the job description I have right here that
Chair,
I printed.
Chair, I believe there's a question
Yes.
from Regent Cruz Crawford.
Oh my goodness, I apologize. Regent Cruz Crawford, please continue.
Regent Cruz Crawford for the record. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much to our HR director there, Mr. Gilliand. I really want to be clear that we're doing this process, Chair Scotta, because we're trying to set in motion the hiring of our new Chief Internal Officer, Auditor. Is that correct? So we need to update all of our items. Okay, perfect. And so I did want to ask Eric about what if our applications look like? Like how many have we been getting lately for some of these positions in NSHE? Because I know as a school principal, it's been dire. We have not, and I've been doing district interviews too. One applicant where we would typically see 20 applicants, 30 applicants. So what has that looked like?
For the record, Eric Gillen, thank you for that question, Regent. I would say similar to your experience and similar to the experiences that employers are seeing across the country in terms of their applicant pools. We have seen a decline. Where we've seen success is where we've taken the time, which we're doing today, to be thoughtful around the qualifications of the position, be thoughtful around the salary for the positions. When we get those, and when you see those in alignment, you will see candidates will come. They will look at jobs that are of interest to them, that meet their needs financially, that meet their needs career-wise, things of that nature. But like I said, I would love to have 100 applicants. I don't believe, in my opinion, that we'll see a huge applicant pool, which I think makes this work today and the work that you're going to do as a committee even more important, because we're going to have fewer applicants to look through. I'm not saying that they're going to be less qualified. They're going to be highly qualified candidates, but we're not going to have a large number to filter through. So getting this right is of critical importance.
Yeah, and so that's what I was thinking, right? And I'm thinking also people want to go and work for companies that have great reputations. And right now we probably don't have the best, reputation, honestly. And so I don't want to put us in a box by, I want the best candidate. I want an amazing candidate, but our candidates are different than they were 2018. Someone used to need 10 years experience, but people are learning at different rates now. So I want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in the box for minimum qualifications. I know that just completely different, but in the school district, you're able to be a mentor and have student teaching after 3 years. It takes a lot. It's a lot quicker for people to master and be able to take their skill set and put it into new areas. That's just the way we learn now. So I want to make sure that that we're keeping an open mind as a committee, not lowering the standard, but I would hate for us to get one applicant when we could get 5 and find someone that is, would be an amazing asset to our organization. So just keeping that in mind. And then we keep talking about raising the standard, but we're not talking about raising the pay. So I also think if we do want to raise the standard, we need to keep in mind that we need to also look at the pay ranges as well. And right now we have Lauren Tripp in our interim position. Does she meet the minimum qualifications that we have here from our 2018 posting?
Again, this is counsel, for the record, Linda King.
Yeah,
We can't discuss confidential personnel information, and,
Oh.
and we don't have
Got it.
we don't have
Okay.
the appropriate waiver for open meeting law. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. So I was just thinking about, how we're currently conducting business, and I totally understand. Sorry, I apologize for that. But yeah, I just wanted us to think about as a committee, as we are talking about getting qualified candidates, to think about putting that in the preferred and maybe not minimum, so we can get as many people as possible applying. There used to be administrator jobs where 80 people would apply. This week, there's been instances that I've seen where there's been 3 jobs where only one person has applied to each one that I know of at the school district level. So just keep that in mind as we go through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Cruz Crawford. But in respect to the school district's higher education and the chief internal auditor, the grade that and the salary range that's going to be coming in, and the level of qualifications, I feel our pool is going to be hopefully higher than some of the responses that you received for some of the positions posted. But we need to make sure we get the highly qualified individual. The reputation for the system and the system offices under the chancellor's cabinet, in addition to the other positions that are filled or open throughout the system itself, are highly reputable and come across with great highly acclamations. And I want to continue that with this throughout this process. So let's go ahead and continue in the discussion regarding to some of the minimum for the chief internal auditor. Are there any recommendations let's start off from the top, for education standards? Anybody have any recommendations for the education standards? None. Okay. One of the items that I would.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, Mr. William.
Sorry, sir, I was stuffing my face there. I think as an educational institution, we should have the highest education requirement just because it is an educational institution. And I believe in getting the best person for the job. I don't always believe that just because someone has been in a position, I see that too much in NSHE. There's too many old boys and old gals in this organization. And like Regent Cruz Crawford said, right now we're not at the top of everybody's list of, this is a great institution, or institutions under NSHE. So I think we need to get the highest qualified candidates. whether it's the person we have or we get it nationwide, but we need to start upgrading our requirements. And some of the preferences, I really would wish they were part of the minimum requirements for such important positions. That's my thought on it. So I'll go back to stuffing my face if you have anything else to say. Or somebody.
Regent Boyle, I'm going to put you on the spot before you unhinge your jaw once more. If we could go ahead and follow up with, are you suggesting increasing the education standards from what we currently have? Is that what I just heard?
No, sir. It asks for a master's, doesn't it? That's the minimum, right, Mr. Gilliland? Oh, minimum is bachelor's. I was forgetting which one it is. One of them is master's, something, yeah.
Chris Fatone.
Please, Mr.
I was
Gilliland.
going to say, yeah, Eric Gillen for the record. So technically, as it's written now, we have two options for the minimum. It's either a bachelor's and 10 years or a master's and 7.
Right. Right. Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. I personally prefer a master's with 7. We must show that we are higher education. We're not just another business that's doing a job or looking for someone to fill that position. Higher education. I'm all for higher education. Isn't that what we stand for? The HE in NSHE? That's just my personal thing, sir.
So, Regent Boyle, I want to follow up with what you just said. A master's degree, it's kind of ambiguous. Are you referring to master's degree in accounting, business, finance, or related field?
Right. No, you're right. I mean, I don't want someone there with a master's in underwater basket weaving or something like that. Of course, it has to be somebody with, knowledge, a subject that mastered in for the position that we're asking for.
Okay.
Does that make sense, sir? I think it makes sense.
It does.
Yes, thank you.
It does make sense. And if I could implore our legal and our chief of staff to assist with making notes of some of these, I'd really appreciate it. I'm doing my best up here, but I'm doing what I can. So with the master's degree, would it be master's degree with 7 years experience? Regent Boylan?
Yes, sir, that would be my preference. Even a master's degree with 5 years experience. From 5 to 7, I really don't think anybody learns anything more. If you've done it for 5 years, you know what you need to know. There's an old saying, if you put 100 monkeys on typewriters for 100 years, they'll write Shakespeare. So there's nothing more. It's not rocket science. After a while, any job, that's it. Unless it's something new that's coming up and we're, like computers and artificial intelligence and all that stuff. But numbers, finance, I haven't heard of anything new coming up. It's the same old, same old. So whether it's even 2 years or 5 or 7, I don't know. That's what my thing is, the master's degree with a minimum of, say, at least 5 years. That's what I would prefer, but we're asking for 7, that's fine with me.
Thank you, Regent Boyd.
Yes,
Regent
sir.
Cruz Crawford?
Regent Cruz Crawford, for the record. I like that 5-year idea. Are we talking about the chief internal auditor or the internal audit manager with Boylan's request? Are we talking about both of those for the 7 years?
We are
5 years.
focusing only on the chief internal auditor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect, because I was looking at both postings. Okay. One of the things that I really like about our system is that we have the opportunity to continue education at an affordable rate for people that are in the system. So I think I would be okay with the 5 years as well, with a bachelor's and the opportunity to obtain a master's within, 3 years or something like that, or begin the programming. Some people don't get their graduate degree because it's very, very expensive, but in this position, they would get discounted rate. So I would say I would like 5 years with a bachelor's or master's degree, with the option of obtaining a graduate degree within the position. I don't know how many years that would take. But I'm
Chair.
okay with 5 years. I think yours is great.
Chair, could we have Mr. Gilliland jump in here, please, sir?
Sure. Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Eric Glenn. For the record, I appreciate that. I just, if I could, just a recommendation that as a committee, probably should seek to at least have the qualifications for the chief be at least at the same level as the manager, if not more. And this is a chief position for the system. Obviously, that is just a recommendation, but just from a structural standpoint, from a classification standpoint, it would make sense to at least have it at the minimum level that we have for the manager. And in this case, a master's in 7 would accomplish that. In fact, that would put it a little bit maybe above what the manager is, which would make sense as well. So just wanted to offer that.
I apologize. I thought we were looking at both of them together since they were both the items attached. So I'm okay with that recommendation.
Masters plus 7, Regent Cruz Crawford. Thank you. Is there any more comments from the dais in Las Vegas?
Susan Brager for the record. So for the if that's okay, internal chief auditor, are we looking at a minimum and a preferred? We want the masters with 7 or equivalent of CPA and certifications and all those that can go with it. I'd like clarity now as we move forward with a possible motion in the next few minutes.
Okay. I know for a fact we were focusing only on the chief internal auditor and the education necessary, the education required as a minimum, in addition to years of experience. So from what I'm hearing is Regent Boylan just said a master's degree, and I want to make sure if you're going to make this motion, Regent Boylan, I'm going to leave that up to you. But what you're stating is a master's degree as a minimum qualification with 5 years experience, Regent Boylan?
Yes, sir. I'm not ready
Or
to
7.
make a motion yet because I want to hear more, but just that's what I would say in my motion if I were to do it.
Regent Brager, does that help?
I have a question. I'm a little confused. If you look at I pulled up the chief internal auditor, and this is directed to you, Regent Boylan.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying, because right now it's got a master's degree and 7 years of experience, so you're saying a master's degree and 5 years of experience. Is that what we're talking?
I would go with that, but a master's for sure.
Well, it says that.
Yes, it says that, yes.
But what the change is, just so we're all on the same page.
Yes.
You're changing it from 7 to 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say 5
Okay.
is enough is what,
All right,
what
all
I
right,
think.
all right. I just want to make sure we're all talking the same thing, and we're
Yes, ma'am.
only talking the chief internal auditor position right now. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
If I
So-
could interject, Chair, again, I apologize for the interruption, but I think it's important because I don't think there is clarity and I want to make sure we have a clear record. You are in deliberations, you're in discussions, there's no motion pending. But as I understood it, what Regent Boylan was proposing for discussion was a minimum qualification of a master's with 5 to 7 years of the comparable experience and removing the bachelor's. So there would not be an option for 2 different minimum qualification education requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. That's exactly what I had on my notes also.
Chair Scott,
Regent
Susan
Bra-
Brager, may I ask a question?
Unquestionably, please.
Thank you. So this would be directed to staff. If we were to go to the masters as the minimum, and the 5 years, which I like that. Does that limit us if someone has a bachelor's and 10 years experience versus having a preferred that they have the master's but not a demand? I'm a little concerned that if we do that, we don't have to hire anybody if we don't want. So the thing is, are we limiting it too much in the environment that we're in, and we do the bachelor's with 10, or if they have the master's with 5, then we look at all options so that we can pick the very best person.
Sure.
That would be my type of emotion.
Absolutely. Eric Gillen for the record. So yes, if the decision was to move to a master's plus 7 and remove the bachelor's component, you would not be able to consider candidates with a bachelor's.
I understand that, but what I'm asking is, does that limit us too much that if they have a bachelor in 10 years and they've done wonderful where they are in a large institution or wherever they come from versus, and saying, I like what Regent Cruz Crawford said, that if they have all of that, but then they need to get their master's within 5 years or 3 years or something like that. I think we're limiting it too much to say that you only can have a master's in 5 years, but if you have a bachelor's in 10 and you've been doing this job very efficiently and we like the rest of their qualifications, that would be more my motion if we were going to make a motion.
Sure.
And there's no more discussion on the table. I'm not rushing it,
Yeah.
but I do feel like that's a better way to do this.
Absolutely.
That's just my opinion from 26 years of hiring and doing things from county commission to school board to this.
Absolutely. From my perspective and within my career in the HR field, I could offer that would definitely limit your ability. And so it goes back to that question of, is the master's a nice to have? Would we like candidates with masters? And you may end up with candidates with masters, but is a master's a necessity to serve in the role? And so that would be the question I would put back to the committee of moving a master's to a preferred doesn't take away your ability to
Right.
evaluate and make decisions based on candidates who have a master's degree. But it also then doesn't limit you from being able to look at, let's say, a candidate with a bachelor's degree and they come in with 15 years of experience as a chief auditor somewhere. You would want to just, you may want to consider, let me rephrase my word, you may want to reconsider whether this does limit your ability.
Okay, Susan Brager, once again, I'm not trying to stop anyone from speaking, but I'd like to throw out a motion for discussion, if that would be okay, unless you are not ready to accept that.
Regent Breger, if you can hold off on that just for a few minutes. I just need to get some clarity from Mr. Gilliland. Mr. Gilliland, just a few minutes ago, you stated that this position should be posted and listed educationally and experience-wise higher than our current internal audit manager, what I'm looking at. You said that it was necessary. You said if not, it was mandatory, that it was important to have the position posted higher than our internal audit manager position. And then you also mentioned about department level leadership, if I remember correctly. I need to get some definitions and some clarity from you because I'm hearing one, now I'm hearing the other. So should this position, in your opinion, be listed as a master's degree? Because right just a few minutes ago, you said, no, it's not necessary.
For the record, Eric Gillen, so my recommendation was definitely that the committee should consider establishing qualifications for the chief that at least meets what the manager's qualifications are and exceeds. That wouldn't be a requirement, but that would be my strong recommendation. If the committee is looking for a recommendation from me, your chief position that's going to supervise the manager should have more qualifications than your manager coming in. As far as if I'm being asked, do I think we should require a master's? I don't, because I think it limits the committee's ability to see the most candidates. But I would strongly recommend that the master's at least serve either as a preferred or in the form that it is now as an option B for the minimum.
I'm pausing. Give me a minute. Okay. After hearing that, what about on the table for the committee? What about experience for department management or supervisory experience.
Regent Del
Regent-
Those are all.
Regent or Scotta, we need you to stay on the minimum right now because I really don't see anything wrong with our minimum qualification. I could agree with Regent Boylan's master's degree in 5 years, just lower that 2 years. But I think it's really important that we leave it at a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in accounting, finance, or related field, and 10 years of professional experience. If we felt 10 years was too many, might want to lower that a couple years, but I'm really comfortable with 10 because this is a big job. We're talking about a system that has a $1.89 billion budget, and you're overseeing all that, 8 institutions, system administration, and system computing services. This is a huge, big job. But the minimum, it's got to be a bachelor's and a master's. To Regent Cruz Crawford's point, we can't narrow this. This is a very competitive job market. And if we were to just say masters, we probably wouldn't even hardly get, maybe we'd get a couple, but we wouldn't get a very wide pool. I can sure say that. So I think it's great we're reviewing all this, but I don't think we need to constrain ourselves at all. Thank you.
This is Susan Brager. I would like to take privilege and make a motion, and then if it doesn't pass, then that's fine. But I do believe we're at a point where we have discussed this almost to death. So my motion is going to be that our and I'm going to phrase it, and we can rephrase it if we need to, our internal chief, thank you, gosh, would have a minimum of the bachelor's, and I'm going to put 8 years because I think that's a good compromise, and a preferred, we could put master's plus 5 in all fields of CPA, accounting, anything that, not anything, but those things that fall under high-level accounting and CPA documentation on their resumes. And do I need to add anything else to that? I think that would cover what we want to do, kind of looking at legal. So a minimum of 10 years, bachelor's degree, or 8 years, excuse me, bachelor's degree with 8 years work experience in the related field, master's plus 5, preferred, and that would be my motion. All of it in our related field, CPA, bookkeeping, accounting. And yeah.
Gotcha.
Changing the years, right? Okay. Here's what I'll do to make it. Thank you, Regent DiCarlo. Bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in accounting, finance, related field, and 8 years of professional managerial experience or master's degree, preferred, and 5 years of comparable professional managerial experience. Certified public accountant would be preferred. Thank you.
I would second that motion, Regent Del Carlo.
Discussion.
Chair Scotta.
Regent Boylan.
Thank you, sir. I hear what Regent Brager and Regent Del Carlo are saying, and it opens up the field a wee bit, but I don't think we should be constrained by the fact that, oh my gosh, we won't get people who apply. I'm sure we'll get enough people if it's opened up to the whole country. There are people who'd love to come to Las Vegas. They love our weather, 120 degrees. Who can complain about that? They love UNLV. We're at the bottom of a lot of things. I mean, NSHE. Why wouldn't they come? I just think being an institute, when I say institute, I refer to all of the colleges and universities. And Regent Del Carlo made a good point. Do we have someone who can handle the $1 billion budget and so many different colleges and universities under them? I didn't see that in the requirements. But I do see that if we have raised the standards, let's raise the bar. We always seem to be saying, as it was in the beginning, let it be that way. No, I want to raise the standards. That's why I think it should be a master's degree. and that's my two-bit. I will not agree with this motion.
Regent Breger, just for clarity, thank you, Mr. Regent Boylan. Just for clarity, what about the department level management and supervisory experience? Regent Breger, you mentioned about that. Was it 3 or 5 years? I believe you said 5.
Susan Breger, for
Because
the
if-
record.
if-
I put, it would be 8 years in their field of experience as a bachelor's degree, 5 years with the, with the master's, and that master's would be preferred, bachelor's and the 8 years would be required. And it's what I stated in what we have as our minimum qualifications was what I read, but changing the 7 years to 5 years. And I think what I would like to do is call for the question and see if the vote's not there, the vote's not there. But I think we have a good motion on the floor.
I do too.
Oh, it says management has been in both statements. Would you like me to read that again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
here's what we're gonna
I
do.
agree that we can get this on the floor. However, we need to have clarity with the motion.
Okay, I'll do it again. The motion is bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in accounting, finance or related field, and 8 years of professional managerial experience, or master's degree and 5 years of comparable professional managerial experience, certified public accountant is preferred. That's the motion.
Thank you, Amy. And I seconded it. Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you. Discussion. I have a quick discussion.
Counsel
So
for
what
the,
is just,
excuse me, Chair, counsel for the record.
yes,
Just to facilitate moving forward and make sure that we have a clear understanding. It looks like it's the will of the committee to handle part 2B in separate parts. And I just want to make sure that that everyone understands and is on the same page that your motion covers qualifications and experience, and you have left competencies for a further discussion. I want to make sure that that's clear to the members, or ensure that that's your intent.
Council?
Can I answer her?
No, please,
Okay.
please go.
That would be my intent, and this is for the internal chief auditor only.
Correct.
We're not
Correct.
discussing the other situation at
Correct.
this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
okay.
this is Boylan. No, may I? Yeah?
Regent Boylan, please go ahead, and then I have a comment
Okay.
afterwards.
I had a question for council. Excuse me. You threw in a new big word in there. You're talking about competencies. What do
Yeah,
you mean?
So when you look at your reference material for the chief internal auditor position statement,
Yeah.
competencies would be the portion that's listed as knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Oh, yeah.
So the motion deals with minimum qualifications, which is education and a certification and the years of experience. So I just wanted to be sure that this motion entails the two aspects, but then when those are resolved, or if they're not resolved, your agenda item also deals with competencies, which is the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and the committee will be handling that later. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that this motion doesn't preclude you from having further discussion on the knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So I have a question in regards to that then. So can't that be part of the motion so we finish this portion of the internal chief auditor?
Yeah, I don't think you need to restate the motion. I think you can, the chair, if there's no further discussion, can call for the vote, and you can continue your
Perfect. Thank you.
deliberations.
I do just have a friendly amendment on this one. And once again, for clarity, you mentioned that a bachelor's degree with 8 years experience and a preferred qualification of a master's with 5 years experience. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. what I would like to do is, only because I'm looking at the current posting for another position of the manager. Give me a second. They're asking for 7 years of progressive experience directly applicable to the position and 3 years of management or supervisory role. Once again, I don't want to have these positions that they are the same qualifications for two different positions when our internal auditor, when the chief internal auditor should have a step above our current, the posted manager position.
Chair
So my only
Scott, may
statement is,
I don't like to interrupt you, but since we're not on that yet, that would be able to be changed when we're on that position. Right now, I thought, and no disrespect intended, and I apologize for the interruption, that we are only talking about that, and we know that the one that's going to manage, it's something we can discuss when we're on that.
we're not going to be on that. See, that's what I'm talking.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, go ahead then. I'm.
thank you. Thank you. Let me go ahead and continue if I may. So, Mr.
This is
Gilliland has
counsel for the
mentioned-
record, Chair, and I again apologize for the interruption, but there's definite confusion among the committee members, and it is important to clarify that the internal manager position will not be
is
considered.
not be discussed.
That reference material is provided for comparison purposes only.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. It's only been there just for comparison. But once again, diverting back to Mr. Gilliland, as you mentioned earlier, sir, is that this position has to be stepped above the current posting for the manager. I'm not trying to confuse this process, but if you're looking at minimum qualifications for the posted position of manager, what is being stated is it's not above the manager position. And you, Mr. Gilliland, correct me if I'm wrong, you just stated a few minutes ago, this position needs to be posted above the manager position. In a significant way is a supervisory role. Yes or no?
My recommendation was exactly as you stated, yes. If I could,
Thank
if I could, one concern that I would have and would lead to a different or maybe a recommendation or modification is currently, as the motion states, is it's a bachelor's and 8 years of experience with the master's and 5 years of experience preferred. That would result in the preferred qualification being less than the minimum. If you consider 5 years experience plus 2 years for the master's, that's essentially equivalency of a 7 year, whereas with the 8 plus the bachelor's is 8 plus 4 years to get the bachelor's. If you do a year for year equivalency to look at the calculation. So actually what my recommendation would be to keep it very similar in terms of the bachelor's plus 8 or the master's plus 5 as opposed to a preferred. Just to ensure that you don't have your preferred qualifications below your minimum.
Chair?
Regent Boylan.
Thank you, sir. And this is to Mr. Gilliland. Excuse me. Is it possible, or do we, well, it is actually, because we're discussing this right now, that in the requirements, we have Chief Internal Officer experience in there. I don't see that anywhere. We're just talking about a master's and 5 years of experience in CPA, in audit, blah, blah, blah. How about, can we not get a Chief Internal Officer position in there? Someone who already has experience as that? What does that do? Upset the apple cart? Which I like doing, so.
Sure. For the record, Eric Gillen.
Yes, sir.
The language that's in the motion is very similar to what's currently in there in that it does imply that we're looking for that experience in terms of the related experience, but you as a committee could definitely clarify that further by specifically say, instead of stating, excuse me, I apologize, bring this back up. instead of stating a professional managerial experience, you could get more specific that you would be looking for. You could say something along the lines of 8 years of professional managerial experience that included time at the deputy or chief audit level, just as a broad example. So that is an option you could do. It is implied in there that you are looking for that comparable experience, but that would be up to the committee to decide how detailed you'd want to get on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. That I would like to add that to the masters and 5 years with experience as a chief internal officer. Let's get the best. I'm making it more difficult, I know, but we get the best. Isn't that what we're trying to do? Always get the best people? So we should have something like that, somebody with a chief internal officer experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. Regent Breger, I see you pushing the button.
I changed my mind. My motion stands as is for now.
Okay, then let's do a vote, if we could, please, for the qualifications and experience and competencies for item 2B. Counselor, am I doing this right? Linda King?
Yeah, the only correction to
Was there a
that,
second?
counsel for the record, Linda King. The motion as stated dealt with the experience, qualifications and experience. Competencies will be dealt with after this motion should it be successful. There is a motion and there is a second.
Thank you, Counselor. Let's take a vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Oh, I mean, aye. Yes.
It'll be okay.
All right.
Point of order. I would like to know who made the second on that motion.
That was Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you.
All right. So, as our Linda King attorney just mentioned, we're going to move on, if I remember correctly, to the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Is that correct, Counselor?
Yeah, Linda King for the record, that's correct. You'll now have remaining items of competencies for the position. You're still in agenda item 2A.
Okay.
Sorry, it's 2B.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to forward this over to our CFO and our Chief Human Resources to get a little background from them regarding the knowledge, skills, and abilities and the recommended and the preferred, please. Mr. Vuitton or Mr. Golan?
Thank you, Chair Scott. Chris Fatone. When we talk about the knowledge, skills, and abilities, I think here we actually just have knowledge, skills, and abilities. It's not listed as minimum or preferred, but that's your basically your second section on that document that is the reference item 2A that was updated in 2018. And the knowledge, skills, and ability here are focused on essentially establishing the areas of expertise that you feel this position should have experience in that will have them be able to serve competently in the position. These areas in this case happen to focus primarily around regulatory items, areas of compliance, things that we do, I would suggest are appropriate and relevant. Given the timing of this update, I think these are the items that would still be relevant today. So.
And Mr. Vitone, you just mentioned, in regards, you were referring to Title 4, Chapter 9, Section 2, if I remember correctly, the scope and types. Is that what you mentioned, sir, or?
Chair Scott, Chris Fatone. I was actually referencing item 2A, which is your position description for the chief internal auditor, and it's the section, the subheading, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And some of those areas of competency I was referring to are knowledge of conformance with audit standards of the Institute of Internal Audit, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and Internal Revenue Service, and others, for example. Again, they're being in a position to understand the obligations of compliance and oversight. Audit experience in information technology systems, such as our ERP systems. So an area of particular growing area of both expertise and risk. So I think you're looking at items here that are relevant in terms of the system's risks and compliance requirements. And that's how these knowledge, skills, and abilities tend to align with the risk. This is the knowledge, skills, and abilities to differentiate from that with the roles and responsibilities. So knowledge, skills, and ability is what the candidate brings to the position in terms of their areas of expertise, where roles and responsibilities tends to focus more on their actual tasks and oversight and areas of responsibility. So if that's helpful, and I could pause there for any other questions.
Mr. Chair.
Regent Boylan.
Thank you, sir. Again, I'm going to trouble Mr. Gilliland. In these KSAs, whatever we ask for or is written or whatever, do they become part of the minimum requirements, or do they become part of how we'd like to have that? And why I say that is, in the KSAs, if we have someone who has experience in that position, they obviously now have the KSA. Now, does that become minimum requirement or simple question, right?
Sure. Thank you, Eric Glenn, for the record. So under the structure that we have currently, it would not function as a minimum qualification. So it will serve kind of two functions. One, it communicates to the candidate additional details around the job and kind of gives them an idea of what's going to be expected of them, the level of experience and knowledge that they should be bringing to the table. The second function that is relevant to this committee is this then gives you criteria in which you can use to differentiate and evaluate candidates. So the best practice rule is if it's not listed in the job requisition, we shouldn't evaluate candidates on it because they did not have a knowledge that they would be evaluated. So this just gives you another tool in which to look at candidates, evaluate candidates. You could elect, although we've moved past the minimums and the qualifications, but I guess you could elect to shift the structure. I think the structure as written works really, really well because it doesn't exclude candidates from applying, but it gives you a great tool and a great set of criteria to use to determine your best candidate.
Thanks. Juan? Okay. This is a wee bit slow today as usual, but that makes sense. At the same time, I'm wondering, in the KSAs, we can't say experience as an acting or as a chief internal officer.
Yeah, Eric Gillen, for the you could. I mean, currently there's an experience in there. So you could. I would suggest that framing it around what are the skills, the knowledge that comes with that, as opposed, because when you see experience, that really fits in the qualifications, minimum or preferred. You've got experience doing this. But this really, what are the skills, knowledge, and abilities that a chief internal auditor would have? And then you could list that. But there's nothing that would preclude you from saying, oh, we'd like for you to have the KSAs of a chief internal auditor through experience as a chief internal auditor.
Thank you, Mr. Gillen, and thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gillen, just for clarity, in in the knowledge, skills, and abilities, this is a section that we could put including 3 years of department level management or supervisory. I want to use that word experience again.
Eric Gillen, again, for the record. Yes, the committee could choose to put that specific experience in the knowledge, skills, and abilities or in the competencies area. There's nothing that would preclude that we have that currently in that we're asking for audit experience with information technology systems, internal controls. My recommendation would be to shy away from specific years of experience. So establishing a minimum threshold that could become problematic, and I would recommend that maybe if there's a desire for that, to revisit the qualifications. I'm not saying do that, but that would be what we would do. But in this, it's really geared around the knowledge, skills, and abilities from a specific experience that you'd be looking for. So the knowledge and ability to manage complex a complex unit and staff, or lack of a better term, I didn't really think this through, but that'd be a way that you could apply that as a knowledge, skill, and ability.
Okay, by that wording, so we would have the ability, we could include obviously strong communication skills, teamwork, collaboration, management, supervisory of a certain duration for over supervisory for on other individuals, of staff. There's other items that we could include here other than what we just have listed, including that certain duration. You advised against duration, but once again, I'm harping upon the fact that this is a chief internal auditor. We have a person coming in for the chief internal auditor, and they have not had a certain duration of management or supervisory skills placed upon them. It could be fruitless, and it may not fully succeed. So I firmly believe that we have to have under knowledge, skills, and abilities something listed in a duration of 3 years of a management or a supervisory experience. There has to be. This is a chief position. This individual should have the experience, knowledge, and the skills of performing those tasks prior to even being considered, or as a benefit as their abilities. Comments, questions?
Chair Arascata, this is Regent Carvalho. I have a question or comment.
Please.
I do see that one of the bullet points is proven supervisory skills to recruit, retain, and develop a professional staff. So I think that covers a lot of what you've just described. My only maybe addition to that might be to include the term to manage in there, proven supervisory skills to recruit, retain, manage, and develop a professional staff. I don't know if that gets closer to where you would like to go. I would agree that putting in a actual number of years of experience might limit us. So I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but I would encourage us to perhaps contemplate adding managerial experience perhaps in that bullet point.
Okay. Thank you for the input on that one, Regent Carvalho. Let's go ahead, Regent Carvalho, if I may put you under, or put the target on you. Do you have, or are you making a motion? Is there a motion on the table for your clarity?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve the knowledge, skills, and abilities section as written, except
for bullet point number 5, which would read proven supervisory skills to recruit, retain, manage, and develop a professional staff.
This is Regent Del Carlo. I second that motion.
Oh, okay, you beat me.
Excellent. There's a motion on the table, and we heard a second from Regent Del Carlo. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's move on here. Without having our previous method, I think we're all have papers scattered all around our desks and in front of us today. So we're going to go ahead and move on.
Chair, this
No, we're
is
good.
council. There's one more component.
I was
if
just
you wanna-
gonna refer-
Great, thanks.
Go ahead. Actually, please, Ms. King, continue.
On 2B, there's one more component, which is the salary discussion, before you move on to another item. Thank you.
It's my next page. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and go to the advertising of the salary range. And once again, I'm trying to look at all my list of strongly preferred, knowledge, skills, and abilities, education, based on the approved qualifications and the items I just mentioned. Mr. Golan, we need to hear from you in regards to the recommended salary for inclusion on this position announcement. And following this, the staff may make the staff recommendations to determine the different salary range and inclusion and the position announcements. Please, Mr. Golan.
Sure. Thank you so much, Eric Gillen, for the record. So before jumping into the recommendation, I do want to give just a real quick background of how I got to the recommendation, because it may be different than what has been seen in previous years within NSHE. I'm very much data-driven. I like market data. Market data helps us determine what our competitors are paying and allows us to determine what level of competitiveness we would like to be in. So for this recommendation, I did utilize Coupa HR, which is the leading national college and university professional association for human resources, and they offer a data on demand service. And what that is, it's a culmination. Annually, they do salary surveys, institutions participate, and essentially they provide, here's what we're paying for these positions. And so Coupa brings that all together, and then we can sort and filter by any number of pieces. So the recommendation is based on true market data, what positions are being paid at comparable institutions. As far as the recommendation, I am recommending, I'll give you my range and then we'll talk about what that means. So I'm recommending a range of 165 to 180. That represents roughly the 45th percentile to the median. So from a compensation standpoint, we kind of have three options of how we want to set our compensation philosophy. We can lag the market. So that's anything below the median of the market. And so the further away you get from the market, the more you're lagging behind. Matching the market is essentially sitting at the median for the market. And then leading the market is anything above the median. I would love for us to lead the market, but as we know, our funding doesn't allow us to lead the market. So we need to find the most competitive place that we can. And I believe that 165 to 180 allows us to be very competitive even at the low end, at the 45th percentile, but it also allows us some negotiation if we do get that highly qualified, that candidate that comes in and just ticks all the boxes. It gives us a range to be able to shift upward as needed. That recommendation does align with, I had to write down some notes. Not too long ago, the system office worked with the Association of Colleges and University Auditors, who provided some salary data based on their own data, and that range falls well within where their recommendation was. And I know CFO Vatone also looked at some comparable positions within the state that if there are questions or may be valuable to the conversation, generally the recommendation I'm making aligns very well with all of those various data points that are out there.
Chair.
Mr. Vatone, Mr. Vatone, if you could follow up with Mr. Gilliland's warm handoff.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Fatone. First, I guess I might want to just confirm, and from my own understanding from Chief HR Officer Gilliland's comments there, the percentiles there, I think we're referring to the Coupa HR percentile data for the position specifically, just to be clear that that's not your salary schedule for the position.
Could you please say that again? I got.
Sure. I just wanted to have Eric confirm for me that I'm not misunderstanding also, but I thought it might be helpful to clarify that the percentile that Chief Gilliland was referring to was specific to the position in the Coupa HR comparison. Your salary schedule is a different schedule, and this position where it fits in the salary schedule is the salary schedule range is significantly broader than the range that he was referring to with regard to the Coupa HR data. For example, the Q1 first quartile for grade E, where this position is positioned, is actually $181,095, just for reference compared to the range that he provided as a recommendation. I did, as he mentioned, I did do some homework in terms of looking around at comparable positions. You have a couple in the system. They're certainly obviously not the same. There's only one of these, but you have a high-level compliance, financial compliance and quality assurance position at UNLV. You do have a campus auditor position at UNR. So let's just look at those positions as comparisons. They're different scopes, different responsibilities, but certainly similar backgrounds typically used for recruitment pool. Otherwise, looked at some comparable government positions. So Clark County Chief Auditor, the City of Las Vegas City Auditor, Washoe County. Those were just some reference points. I was able to look for some comparable both minimum qualifications in terms of years of experience and education, and in those cases where they post their salary range for those positions. So I did not pull the specific salaries for the incumbents in those positions, but we have the range that those positions are currently that are established for those positions. So those were all things that were taken into consideration.
Under those salary ranges and the items and the job postings you just referred to, were the qualifications higher or lower than the ones that we are just approved?
Chris Fatone for the record there. First comparison, so Clark County's Director of Audit, the experience requirement is 6 years of management. They have a certification requirement, a CPA. Their degree is bachelor's. For the City of Las Vegas City Auditor, their experience requirement is 10 years, a certification requirement, a CPA or CIA, education requirement is bachelor's. And I apologize, I did not pull the Washoe County experience and degree requirements, but let's see if I can find them.
Sure.
Thank you. Regent Bull, if you can just hold on for 1 second here.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I apologize, Scott. Did you want the two, at least within the system, the two positions as comparison? Because I do have the job announcements for those two positions. I can provide what the experience and education requirements were for those if you'd like, but they're not the same. But if you're interested, I can provide them.
If they're not the same, well, the reason I'm saying the word, once again, ambiguous same, is because we're doing this strictly for this Chief Internal Auditor. And Mr. Gilliland, just for clarity, is this going to be under a grade E salary structure under a minimum to Q2?
It is at grade E. And this would be, but the range falls between the minimum and Q1 of the NSHE salary schedule.
Okay. And I know you mentioned the, Mr. Vitone just also gave clarity that the salary schedule, and that's what we're going to be doing, falls under Title IV, Chapter 3, Section 27, is what I just pulled up, which provides the initial placement on the salary schedule must fall between the minimum salary and the Q2 mid-range.
That policy, I believe, is correct language, that placement would not fall above the midpoint generally, and then anything above the midpoint requires, in this case, it would require Chancellor, would it be Chancellor still with the Chief Chancellor approval or the board's approval to go there?
I believe the board sets the compensation on the
Okay.
yeah, the board sets the compensation, but the, and again, I think we're just talking about the announcement today.
Correct.
And we would, yeah.
Okay. Regent Boylan, you had a comment, question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. First, I'll apologize to Regent Del Carlo. I was growling out here when she couldn't hear Mr. Vitone. But my question, suggestion, and I'm usually against increasing salaries or giving more money, taxpayers' money away and blah, blah, blah. I usually fight that a lot. But again, I'll go back to the higher education and getting more people to apply. I think our minimum to maximum range should be even higher for this position. This is a chief position. We call them chief internal officer. There's a reason for that. They have much more responsibility, more work, more everything. And maybe it's because some of our positions, we underrate them as far as salary is concerned. So maybe we'll get more people coming in for the salary. Why not? It's Vegas. You have more money, you gamble more money. So we could, I'm sure, ask Mr. Vitone where we could find some money for this position. We keep messing around with our land sales and our land properties around. There's millions in there, and there's something going on strange. And that's neither here nor there. But Mr. Vitone, I'm sure you could find us some money. Is it possible to increase the salary for this?
Regent Boylan, I'm going to
Yes,
jump
sir.
in here. We are going to follow we're going to follow the handbook, sir. We're going to follow the handbook. We're not going to be seeking for additional finances for the position. We're going to be seeking exactly what is recommended by our handbook and what is under Title 4, Chapter 3, Section 27. We are unquestionably going to be doing this by the book. And I understand that larger finances and to be dangling that carrot would be extremely beneficial. But in order to get the most qualified individuals, we can't take money from Peter to pay Paul. I think it's important that we stick to the book on this one, sir.
I get you. Thank you so much. But could Mr. Vitone still, humor me on this so that I, being on the committee, feel, we did our best. So, if you, with your permission, Mr. Vitone, could you tell us if we could scrape up some money from somewhere? If we were not doing this by the book, like the chair says, is that possible?
No.
Knowledge is power, so I like the knowledge.
Chris Vitone, for the record. I hesitate to commit to finding money for a particular salary. I can confirm that the salary range that Mr. Gilliland recommended is a salary range that is planned, but it is within your purview to consider other alternatives. Again, I would just note, to the extent it may be helpful, that the range that he recommended does comply with the policy, your policy, as Regent Arascott has suggested as well. I don't know if that's helpful. Again, it's difficult to commit. I did not anticipate that question
Huh,
today.
Thanks, Mr. Vuitton. No, it isn't helpful to me, at least, maybe to everybody else. So I'll ask the council, can I ask a question like this? Can NSHE search for money for a position, for this position, since it's on the agenda? I'll put it like that. Is that possible? And then I'll ask Mr. Gilliland too. Yes, sir, could I ask council?
Yes, Counselor, please, and I have a follow-up.
Linda King, for the record, I believe you have asked, and it is appropriate under this agenda item. You are agendized to discuss salary, and the funding of that salary would be related, but I believe that CFO Vuitton has answered your question.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. maybe Gilliland can help with this also, since we can discuss it, so I'd really like to discuss this. And we'll go by the book, like you're saying, because I'm sure everybody wants to go by the book. Mr. Gilliland, did you have anything, sir?
Eric Gillen, for the record, just wanted to add and I apologize. I should have mentioned this up front. While we want to definitely look at the market and we want to be competitive with the market, we do have to consider internal equity and compression. So anything kind of above where we're at would start to compress into existing employees, some of which may be at a higher level or have more broad scope. And so we would want to just be cautious not to compress or invert those salaries as well. So this fits in nicely, not only from a market standpoint, but from an organizational equity and compression standpoint as well. So that would just be another consideration. Thinking looking to go above the 180 would start to compress and would create some other downstream compensation issues that would need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. That word compression comes in and I understand. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Regent Carvalho.
Thank you, Chair Scotta. I just have some clarifying questions. What is the current minimum for grade E and the current midpoint? And does that take into consideration the COLA that will be implemented on October 1st? I realize that it probably is already part of that salary, but if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
Sure, and I'm going to peek over because Chris has the schedule. So the administrative, well, all the salary schedules were updated July 1 based on the recommendation and the approval of the board. So they were all increased by 10%. So currently the minimum for grade E positions is 135,821, and I believe you asked for the midpoint. Midpoint is 226,370.
The midpoint's the 226, or is that the high?
That's the midpoint, 226,370. The maximum is 316,918. Midpoint or Q2, sorry, are the same. So yeah.
Thank you. Minimum and Q2. Thank you for the clarity.
Mr. Chair, if Regent Carvalho's done.
Regent Boylan, please.
Thank you, sir. Whoa, now you threw me a loop. You're going up to 226. What does this mean? I'm a simple man, especially with numbers and money. So, but suddenly we're going to, what's going on?
I think it's, Eric, for the record, one thing I think is important to point out on our salary schedule. When years ago, the decision was made to go to a single salary schedule for all administrative faculty for all institutions. So what happened with that, and in order to make that work, we had to set the minimums very low to accommodate our small institutions, and we had to set the maximums very high to accommodate the R1s. And those were set based on market data, based on those institutions. The challenge comes in is we have a completely different set of peers and a completely different compensation philosophy than maybe one of our other institutions. So while we want to fit within our salary ranges on our schedules, it's not an apples to apples comparison. We can't look at our salary schedule it would not be advisable to look at our salary schedule and use that as the basis for where we should place somebody. We should really look at the market and what's actually being compensated for that type of position.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Chair Arascott, I'm sorry, I'm speaking without your permission, if that's okay.
Always this bit.
Okay,
Regent
thank you.
Carvalho always does.
Thank you. I did want to ask that just to clarify, one, that it is within that range for the record, and also to be sure that this preferred range would not fall below the minimum at some point, and that sounds like that's already been considered, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Regent Carvalho. Bear with me here, please. Okay. Oh, Linda King, if I may get some little bit of guidance from you. So at this point, we are going to be making a motion for the advertised salary. Is that correct?
Yes, you may entertain a motion.
May I please entertain a motion for the salary range as advertised, based on the approval qualifications staff will recommend, based on the approved qualifications and the salary range stated by Mr. Gilliland for inclusion on the position announcement.
I will make a motion to accept the salary range of $165,000 to $180,000 based on CHRO Gilliland's recommendations.
I second that, Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you, Regent Del Carlo. Let's take a vote. All in favor of the motions, please signify by saying aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye also. All opposed? Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 3, the search process. And at this point, the committee will discuss the process for conducting the search for the chief internal auditor. And what we're going to really be discussing is the limitation, recruitment, and advertising strategies. I know that Regent Boylan mentioned a little while ago that putting out the widest net and casting the widest net is important. However, we need to determine the individuals responsible for conducting the initial screening and application materials for the minimum qualifications. Also, we're going to be all discussing the individuals responsible for conducting the secondary review of the applicant material and seeing finalists for the interview committee. So let's go ahead and start off with the first item, if we could, please, in which we need to take action on the 3 decision points. The recommended advertisement for this position. In the past, actually, one of the items that Regent Boylan did pop up is the little tiny advertisement on the bottom left-hand side, the very, very bottom of our NSHE website. Why it is so concealed and not obvious is beyond me. However, the NSHE career page is definitely a location. If we can go to Mr. Gilliland for the other recommended advertising positions.
Eric Gillen, for the record, I apologize. I didn't know this was going to be called upon to me, but I can definitely share. We do have our standard advertising that we do for our positions within higheredjobs.com, which is the key piece. We also obviously post on our careers page on NSHE's website. Options that we would have are really up to the committee. I would recommend that we look at some diversity, either print publications are kind of, we don't really do print publications any longer, but diverse issues in higher education, women in higher ed. There are a number of diverse areas that we can work with our advertising vendor to help us get posted. And I would encourage several diverse areas. I think that meets with our mission and what we're trying to do here as well. But I would how do I say this? We don't have a whole lot of restrictions on where we want to post it. We want to cast the net wide, and so we can look at maybe doing an announcement on social media, things of that nature. But we can definitely support anything that a member of the search committee might have as far as where they'd like to see it posted.
I'm going to chime in here. I did some research on some of our recent posting and past postings. I'm just going to name off 7 locations. One is, of course, the career page, but the others are the Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, higheredjobs.com, Diverse Issues in Higher Education, diversejobs.net, and the last one that was posted was the Institute of Internal Auditors website. Are there any other locations that may be recommended or suggested? Okay.
So,
Yes, sir.
Chair,
Regent
Harrison.
Boylan.
I'm glad you said that about the internal auditors magazine or whatever it is. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure I get the idea. I think that's a great idea if there's a few of those, not just one, like higher ed and all that stuff we have in higher ed. So in auditing, if there is a few of those, I think we should really do that. That's a great idea. Thank you for
It was the Institute of Internal Auditors website. And actually, I'm going to continue to ride that coattail, Mr. Regent Boylan, is yes, focus on other audit managerial websites or audit communities. I think that would also be beneficial. Are there any other additions or suggestions? Okay. I'm gonna go over to Linda King if I could, Counselor. Do we have to take these in separate orders and vote on all of these different items, or do we just take it all in one swoop?
Linda King for the record. There's no requirement for you to do it either way, just as the committee prefers.
Well, then I'm going to go ahead and start off with, may I have a motion on the table for the recommended advertising positions?
Could I ask a question before
Yeah.
we do the motion?
Yeah.
Is
Of
all
course
the
we do.
advertising free, or do we pay? Do we have a budget?
Oh, you pay.
I'm just used to that in prior searches. Thank you.
Most, Eric, for the record, most of our ad hoc what I call our ad hoc, so not our standard, there is a fee. We do work with an advertising partner that handles the negotiation and actually the posting of the jobs for us. It's free of charge to us for their services, but we do have to pay whatever the posting fee is. That could range anywhere from $0. Many of the industry publications, or if we've got memberships with any of those national organizations, oftentimes you get a free job posting. It could be up to $1,000, couple $1,000 per advertisement.
Thank you, Mr. Gillen. With the items in which I mentioned, the locations I mentioned, if we could get a little bit of feedback from the dollar amount or if we have publications or subscriptions to this in which we can post a advertisement free of charge, that'd be beneficial. Casting a wide net would be best course.
If that's something that we can, I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity to bring back or how we could maybe communicate that back. It may take a little bit of time to, because those are multiple areas in terms of what their costs are. I don't know how that might look in terms of this process, but.
Okay. Once again, is there a motion on the table to accept a recommended advertising, or is there a motion on the table?
Yeah, you would.
Go ahead, Regent Boylan. Did I hear you?
No, actually, Regent Del Carlo read my mind for the previous question, but I was looking at her because I think she had a motion, so.
Okay, I
apologize.
make a motion to advertise in the agencies listed by Region Arascata, including higher ed jobs, NSHE website, Chronicle Higher Ed, Inside Higher Ed, higheredjobs.com, diversejobs.net, Institute of Internal Auditors website, and Diverse Jobs in Higher Education. Did I get them all?
Well done.
I'll second that. Regent Susan Brager.
Thank you. Seconded by Regent Brager. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Excellent. Now, we're going to move on to determine the individuals responsible for conducting the initial screening of applicant materials for minimum qualifications. So, one of the items I would not like to do is have an overflow of individuals. It's been recommended in the past to maintain this and keeping the filtration system at a level that's going to be able to be conducive to a positive search. Some of the recommended individuals that I would like to see is CFO Vuitton and CHRO Gilliland. Two individuals who've been doing the majority of the presentation today and have the vast majority of the information. And are there any other recommended individuals that would like to be seen for the initial screening?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Boylan, please.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to recommend you. I love seeing you suffer, but I think one of us from the committee should be on that because in the past, we've had accusations and problems with minimum requirements and who was selected. So I would say you as the chair, if you don't mind, and if you don't mind traveling or whatever, I would recommend at least you be on that with Mr. Gilliland and Mr. Vuitton, if that's possible, right, Council? I can recommend someone else?
Linda King for the record. Yes, you can.
See, I got out of it that way, and so I don't have to do it. Oh, it's my motion? No, I didn't make a motion. I'm just offering someone up as a sacrificial lamb here. Would you like to do it, sir?
Regent Boylan, thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
that recommendation, or for that throwing my hat in the ring. However, we're going to have another screening after this to conduct the secondary screening to select the finalists. And as in with the same with chancellor searches and presidential searches, it is most common with the Board of Regents to have the chair of the committee work on one of the secondary searches or at least one of the reviews. And at that time, I would be willing to do. But in the initial search, the initial screening, I fully believe that having by the CFO and the CHRO is unquestionably going to be the best process in my eyes
Chair.
to throw out the best candidates.
Chair Arascata?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's a good sneaky way of getting out of that one. But I, for one, am never always, that's the way we've always done it, so we'll do it that way. Like I just mentioned, we've had people complain about the initial searches, and we are so scared of even getting 1 or 2 or 3 people applying, so it's not a very difficult job. So I volunteer to be with them if you say so. I would like to do the initial screening with them or any other member of this committee, but there must be one regent on that search. Because we're not expecting 100, are we? No, we're not. So even if there's 1 or 10, I'm sure one of us has the time to do it. That's my suggestion. And I make a motion exactly. I'll make a motion that one member of this committee should be with Mr. Vuitton and Mr. Gilliland to do the initial, what do you call it? Going through the initial screening. Thank you,
To conduct the
Chair.
initial screen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Regent Carvalho. No, Regent Del Carlo. But yeah, that's my motion. And I think I said it beautifully.
Linda King for the record.
There's a motion on the, yep, go ahead, Linda.
That's one individual? Did you want to
Just,
consider?
yes, okay, maybe if there's more than one from this committee, sure, one plus.
No, I mean, that there's, right now, who else will be doing the minimum
Mr.
qualifications?
Vuitton and Mr. Gilliland.
Just to be clear that that was a part of the motion. Thank you.
Yes, yes,
Sorry
yes,
if
of
I missed
course.
that.
Yeah, no, thank you, ma'am. That's my motion.
Motion on the table, is there a second?
Second, Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you, Regent Del Carlo. All in favor of the motion set forth by Regent Boylan,
I'm
signify by
sorry
saying
to
aye or
interrupt,
yes.
but before you take a vote, Linda King for the record, I see your frustration. However, I don't want you to have to call another meeting to determine who that individual is. So you either need to leave that authorization to someone on the committee or choose who that individual will be now.
I'm going to follow the motion on the table. All in favor by accepting the motion of Mr. Vuitton, CFO Vuitton, CHRO Gilliland, and Regent Boylan on the search
Oh,
committee
boy.
as
Okay.
the three individuals to conduct the initial screening, signify by saying aye or yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, what the heck?
All opposed?
This is Chair Escada, Susan Brager for the record. A quick question, if you want to ask something, go first. So when we discussed the chancellor search, there was an issue with more than like one person. So I guess is this search different to where you can have, I'm fine with the two that were appointed, nothing against you. It's not you as a person, it's a region in itself. Is it legal through the open meeting law? I'm a little,
Mr. Chair, Carrie Nikolajewski, Chief of Staff for the record. Prior council, you're correct, gave advice that more than one regent would be an issue to do the screening. So if you then are going to consider a regent for the secondary screening, I don't know that it could be
a different
another
person.
regent. Yeah.
That's what I was getting to. So I wasn't certain, it's either we have to have no one now and Chair Escada I was just going by legal. I'll just finish this and then Carol wants to say something, or Regent Del Carlo. That was my concern, is that if Regent Boylan did it now and Regent Escada did it then, would that be breaking the open meeting law? Because it's really an absurd open meeting law, number one, that one person, more than one is a quorum when there's X amount of people on a board. But I am working with a legislator on that. I just need Mr. Wixom to get me the continued information that I need to give to her to give us that flexibility when we're doing those types of searches. I'm done.
Linda King for the record. Your chief of staff is correct, but you've had a motion, a second, and a vote. So you can, as you move on to the next item, you do have that restriction, depending on what your vote will be. You can go back and do a motion to reconsider.
I have a question, just to be clear, Ms. King, we're voting to have Regent Boylan accompany both Mr. Vuitton and Gilliland on the initial screening, and that's it.
Linda King for the record, yes, the initial screening for minimum qualifications. So I think that that it would be beneficial if the CHRO could speak to human resource practices so that you can all have that background as you move forward.
Okay, and then I have another question because I know Chair Scotta indicated he'd like to be the regent that's part of the screening once the minimum candidates are there. Does that require then another motion?
You'd have to reconsider the motion that you just took, yes.
Mr. Chair,
So I have to go back and redo it, right? Yeah, okay.
Please.
Okay.
if Regent Del Carlo, you're done, right? Okay. So now, you said earlier, it doesn't have to be one regent. It could be two, but it's not a quorum. It would have to be over 3 to be a quorum.
No.
Because it's 5. No? Yes. I'll ask council. But from my idea of the NRS and all those things, a quorum is only when there is more than half, or plus we have 5. And you suggested earlier that there could be more than one regent to do the initial screening.
Linda King for the record. That's not what I suggested,
No, okay.
but it would be an open meeting violation if you were to have more than 2 regents in the process that occurs, or excuse me, more than 1 regent in the process that occurs outside of a public meeting of this body, of the committee. So if you choose to use a regent at the initial screening for minimum qualifications, unless you reconsider that motion, you won't be able to add a regent. I understand the frustration with that, but we want to keep you clear of an open meeting law problem. So you'd have to go back, and that's why I'm saying you'd have to reconsider that motion if then at the next screening where you decide which of the applicants who have met minimum qualifications want to move forward to be interviewed by the committee, a regent would not then be a part of that screening. So, but you've taken them separately, so I appreciate Chief of Staff's, foresight on that and letting you all know, because your motion won't be able to include a regent on that unless you plan on taking the reconsideration.
Okay, Council Chair,
I would
if I
like to
may.
withdraw my
sorry.
motion.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Please, Regent Boylan, please.
Okay,
I don't want to talk.
Linda King, for the record, the motion's been voted on, so you've taken an action. So it's too late to withdraw the motion, but someone can make a motion, someone who voted in favor can make
My
a
mistake.
motion to reconsider. You have to vote on the motion to reconsider, and then you can make a new motion.
so before we make a motion to reconsider, and I'll make that motion, I have no problem with that. I'll make the motion to reconsider, but I need to have this clear. You said that if we have one regent in the initial screening, we cannot have a regent in the secondary screening. Which, could you please find that for me, state the law? Where is that? I don't care if previous council just said it, I don't care. I want the actual law that says that is the process and we cannot have another regent or, somebody from this committee in the secondary program. Where is that? Please.
Linda King, for the record, it's in NRS 241, and I'd be happy to provide you with a legal opinion in writing.
Awesome. NRS 241, you said? NRS. And since I really can't look it up just now, not that I don't believe you or trust you, I just don't trust anybody. But no, I believe you. So I can't look that up. So I will make a motion to reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. Boylan. Thank you for the motion to reconsider, sir.
Chair,
Yes.
Linda King, for the record again.
Please.
Please specify what your motion to reconsider is.
Oh, my motion to reconsider is reconsider my previous motion, that we have just one person from this committee on the initial search, the initial screening. So reconsider that
Regent Boylan,
motion.
if I can work on this,
Please do.
Regent Boylan, what you're
Please.
stating is that your reconsidering the motion is to continue with the recommended individuals of having only, during the initial screening, having CFO Baton and CHRO Gilliland to do the initial screening. Is that, and no, not a regent on the committee, is that correct?
That is correct, to reconsider that.
Thank you.
Especially since I haven't read the NRS 241 and I don't know its words. So yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for the interruption. Carrie Nicolajewski for the record. So the motion to reconsider would be reconsider the previous motion, which was to specify that CHRO Gilliland, CFO Batone, and Regent Boylan make up that initial screening review committee. Then you would make a separate motion if this passes to once again specify the individuals that would be involved in that process.
Yes, reconsider the motion, yeah.
Chief of Staff Nick Lajewski, thank you very much for the clarity. Let's take a vote for the reconsideration of the motion. All in favor of the reconsideration of the motion signify by saying aye or yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So the reconsideration of the motion
Mr. Chair,
passes.
may I ask for a clarification on who was the second on that motion?
For the reconsideration?
Correct.
Who is the second? Are you the second since you were the second?
Nobody was.
Nobody was, so.
I'll
Council-
second
Oh,
it.
I apologize. I apologize. I thought I heard someone in the background without a microphone. Thank you for the second, Regent Breger. Let's go ahead and take the vote once again. All in favor signify by saying aye or yay.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. So here we go, just for clarity. The individuals that will conduct the initial screening are CFO Vuitton and CHRO Gilliland. Woo, okay. So we're going to be moving on here.
Mr. Chair,
To
you need
the
a motion
recommended-
for that? I apologize for the interruption. You need another motion to approve the individuals who will do the initial screening.
Thank goodness we have you assisting on this whole process, ladies. So for a new motion, I'm going to place a motion on the table to recommend the only two individuals to conduct the initial screening are the CFO Vuitton and CHRO Gilliland.
I'll
Is there a
second
motion
that.
on the table?
No, I have to second it. Someone has to second it. I'll second it.
I put the motion on the table. I did not make the motion.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Make a motion, go ahead.
I'll make the motion
I'll
for what you
second it.
said.
Thank you for the motion by Regent Boylan, seconded by Breger. Thank you both. All in
No.
favor signify by
It
saying
was
aye.
by,
Regent Carvalho seconded it, so.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye or yay.
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Wonderful. So we're going to move on just a little bit by the recommended individuals conduct the secondary review and select finalists to bring forward to the committee. As I previously mentioned, I would be throwing my name in the ring on this one as the committee chair. Second of all, I'm going to place a request of CFO Vuitton, and I reached out to one other individual who has great knowledge in regards to this position, and it is UNLV Business Affairs Chief Compliance Officer and former NSHE Chief Internal Auditor Joe Sunbury. Hence, the three individuals to do the secondary screening would be myself, Committee Chair Scotta. The second individual will be CFO Chris Vuitton, and the third individual will be UNLV Business Affairs Chief Compliance Officer and former NSHE Chief Internal Auditor Joe Sunbury. Is there a motion on the table to accept those three individuals?
I will make that motion. This is Regent Carvalho.
Thank you, Regent Carvalho. Is there a
Second, Regent Breger.
Thank you, Regent Breger. All in favor of the motion to recommend myself, CFO Vuitton, and former NSHE Chief Internal Auditor Joe Sunbury as the three individuals conduct the secondary review? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Councillor King, if I may put you on the spot, did we go over all the items based on the second paragraph of the agenda? We did do number 1, we did number 2, and we just completed number 3. Is that correct?
Linda King for the record. Yes, Chair, you have completed agenda item number 3 and can move to number 4.
Thank you very much, Ms. King. Let's move on to new business. Is there new business for the Chief Internal Auditor Search Committee? None stated?
New
Excellent.
business? I have
New business. New business from Regent McMichael. Although you're not on the committee, what would be the new business, sir?
I'm making a motion to rescind the removal of Regent McMichael from the IDEA Committee.
Thank you very much, Regent McMichael. So now, as we're going
Linda
to
King,
move
for the
on
record.
to, yes,
Requires a second.
The new business item as stated by Regent McMichael needs to be made before the full board. It's not a matter that would be heard by this committee. So Regent McMichael, you could bring that item as new business under a full board meeting. I think your next one will be August 23rd.
thank you, Council, very much.
Can I make a motion for a special meeting prior to the August 23rd?
Linda King, for the record. Now is not the time for motions. If you would like to discuss how regents can request special meetings, I'd be happy to talk with you about that offline, or you could speak with Special Counsel Chris Nielsen. That's governed.
I was under the
It's governed
impression
under your bylaws.
under our bylaws in new business, a motion can be made.
No, and I think that in order for us to give you the proper legal guidance, that we could have that discussion offline. Regardless, either of those motions, if they were indeed appropriate, would need to be made before the full board, not this committee.
Thank you for the clarity, Ms. King. We're going to move on to public comment, if we could, please. Is there public comment at GBC and Elko?
There is no public comment.
Is there a public comment here in Reno? Which there is not. Is there a public comment at the Las Vegas Systems office?
Yes.
Regent, yes, please, public comment. If you could state your name, I'd appreciate it.
Donald McMichael, Senior. I'm a regent on the board of NSHE, and I would like to read into the record a comment that was made on Channel 13. It was in reference to an article or a letter that was put out on June 17th and regarding comments made by myself where a Channel 13 reporter said that the chair and the vice chair condemned my statements but did not name me. I would like to offer our guidance on this as to why we're letting such a statement stand without pushback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. For those who, and I was remiss to mention this, for those who did call in which they did dial the 669-444-9171, and of course they entered the meeting ID 928-49-445069, and I'm sure you all put the password in of 555-5555. Is there any public comment at the meeting sites? And there was none. Hence, I will move on to SCS. Is there any public comment on the phone? Very much so. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.